Hey everyone. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think about the characters and their choices. Enjoy the story. I never thought it would happen to me. I always imagined myself as the kind of person who would never cheat, who would never betray someone I loved, especially not someone like John. We had been together for 5 years, and everything was supposed to be perfect. We were about to get married in 2 days, our lives were planned out, and I honestly thought we were solid. But sometimes life throws you curveballs, and suddenly you find yourself questioning everything. It all started a few weeks before the wedding. I was in our neighborhood when I saw him for the first time, Mike. He was part of the local fire crew, and there had been a small fire on the block. I didn't even know what happened, but I remember standing by my front porch, watching him move confidently around the site, directing others. There was something magnetic about him, the way he carried himself. And let's be honest, he was gorgeous. I tried not to stare, but it was hard not to notice the way he looked. Tall, broad-shouldered, with those piercing blue eyes. I felt a little guilty, to be honest, because I knew what I was doing. But John, my fiancé, had been so busy with wedding preparations and work. He was always distracted, his mind somewhere else. He didn't notice me the way he used to, and I had started feeling invisible. I was left alone most nights, with just the wedding plans to keep me company. So, when Mike looked over at me, caught my eye, and smiled, something inside me stirred. It wasn't just that smile, though. It was the way he made me feel like I was the only person in the world. He came over to me after the fire was out, asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. His voice was calm, confident, and his attention made me feel alive. At first, I brushed it off. He was just being polite. But then he started visiting the local bar where I would go with my friends. At first, it seemed innocent. I didn't think anything of it, but Mike would sit with me, talk to me, ask about my life. And with each passing conversation, I began to realize just how much I missed feeling noticed. It wasn't long before I started looking forward to seeing him. I'd even rearrange my schedule to make sure I was at the bar when he was working. At first, it was just harmless flirting, or so I thought. He'd joke around, tease me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt desired. I started to notice the way he looked at me, and I'll admit, I liked it. He had this way of making me feel like I was more than just a fiancé, more than just someone stuck in the routine of wedding planning. He made me feel seen. But the more we talked, the more I realized something was off in my relationship with John. I didn't want to admit it, but the truth was staring me in the face. John was so absorbed in the wedding, his career, everything else. He didn't have time for me anymore. When we'd sit together, it felt like we were both just going through the motions. There was no spark, no passion. It wasn't that I didn't love him. Of course I did. But love alone wasn't enough to fill the emptiness I felt inside. And that's when it happened. One night, Mike invited me to meet him after his shift. He said he had something he wanted to talk about. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe I was just lonely, or maybe I just wanted to see where this would go. But I knew I shouldn't be doing this, even as I told myself that nothing would happen. I had no intention of cheating, after all. I wasn't that kind of person. But somewhere deep down, I was curious. When we met, Mike was waiting by his truck. He smiled when he saw me and opened the door for me. We ended up driving to a small park on the outskirts of town. It was late, and the streets were empty. We talked for a while, about everything and nothing. It was comfortable. But as the night went on, I could feel the tension between us building. He was close now, his hand lightly brushing against mine. The touch sent a spark through me, and I couldn't deny the attraction anymore. I remember the moment so clearly. He turned to me, his face just inches from mine, and for a split second, I thought about pulling away. But I didn't. Instead, I let him kiss me. His lips were soft but urgent, and for a moment, everything else faded away. The guilt, the anxiety, the fear, none of it mattered. All I could think about was him, and how he made me feel. Before I knew it, we were in his truck, parked in a secluded spot by the lake. His hands were everywhere, and I let him pull me closer. It felt like an explosion, like I was finally waking up from a long, lonely sleep. The moment we were together, I knew I had crossed a line. But at the same time, I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in so long. I didn't plan for this to happen. I didn't want it. But it did. And when it was over, I felt a strange mixture of excitement and regret. I knew I had to go home, but I didn't want to. I wanted to stay, to feel the warmth of his body against mine, just a little longer. But instead, I pulled myself together and left the truck, knowing that my life was about to change forever. As I drove home, I tried to push the thoughts of Mike out of my mind, but it was impossible. What had I just done? And more importantly, what would I do now? I was about to marry John, the man I'd planned to spend the rest of my life with, and yet here I was, carrying this secret inside of me. I couldn't stop thinking about Mike, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I didn't just feel guilty. I felt confused. What did this mean for me, for my future with John? When I walked through the front door of our house, I saw John sitting at the kitchen table, looking through some wedding details. He didn't even look up. And for a brief moment, I wished he would. I wished he would notice me, like Mike did. But instead, I just stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, and wondered how I was going to keep this secret. The next day, the guilt started to eat at me. But what could I do? I had already crossed that line, and now I had to figure out how to face it. How could I live with myself knowing what I had done? But I couldn't help it. I needed to see Mike again. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened with Mike. The moment we shared, the intensity of it, it kept replaying in my mind over and over. I felt like I was living in two separate worlds. On one hand, I had John, my fiancé, who was busy with wedding details, work, and everything else. He was so preoccupied, so focused on the wedding. But on the other hand, I had Mike, the fireman who, in a way, had reignited something in me I didn't even realize was missing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a mistake, but at the same time, part of me didn't regret it. How twisted was that? I was about to marry the man I had been with for years, the man I loved. But Mike made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in so long. He was everything John wasn't: spontaneous, passionate, focused entirely on me in those brief moments we spent together. I knew I couldn't keep going back to Mike. I knew that I should stop it, that it was wrong. But every time I looked at John, I just felt so disconnected from him. He was wrapped up in our wedding plans, and honestly, I felt like a supporting character in my own life. We barely talked. It was all about the color scheme, the venue, the guest list, the details. All of it was great, but it was like we had lost each other somewhere along the way. Then, it happened again. Mike texted me the morning before the wedding. "Hey, I've got some time after my shift today. You want to grab a coffee?" I stared at the message for a long time, my heart racing. Part of me knew it was wrong, that I should be focusing on John and the wedding, but another part of me wanted to see Mike again. To feel that rush, that spark. I told myself it would just be coffee. Just a quick meet-up, nothing serious. I convinced myself that I could handle it. But the truth was, I was already in too deep. I agreed. I met him in a small cafe downtown, away from the wedding chaos. The moment he walked in, my heart skipped a beat. He had this way about him, so calm, so self-assured. I could tell he'd been working, his uniform still slightly wrinkled. But there was something about that. It was like he didn't have to try. He was just him. And I wanted to be around him, to talk to him, to feel his attention on me. "Hey," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. His smile was so easy, so familiar, that it made me relax a little. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I had to act normal. I had to act like I wasn't spiraling out of control. We talked about the usual things at first. Work, the weather, the wedding. But it didn't take long for the conversation to drift. His eyes, the way he looked at me, made it clear that he wasn't interested in small talk. "So," he said, leaning forward slightly, "how's the wedding prep going? You ready to tie the knot?" I laughed nervously, trying to play it off. "I mean, yeah. I guess. Everything's in place, you know?" "Yeah, but are you ready?" he asked, his gaze intense. "Are you really ready for all of that?" The question caught me off guard. I blinked a few times, unsure of how to answer. Was I really ready? Or was I just going through the motions? "I don't know," I said honestly, feeling a pang of guilt. "I mean, I love John. I do. But I don't know. Things have been different lately. He's been so focused on the wedding, and I just feel like we're not on the same page anymore." Mike nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "I get it," he said softly. "I know how that feels. Sometimes, when you're with someone, you start to feel like they're not really seeing you anymore. Like you're just there." His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. That was exactly how I'd been feeling for months, maybe even longer. John wasn't really seeing me. He was so consumed with everything else that I felt like an afterthought. "I don't want to hurt him," I said quietly, my hands wrapped around my coffee cup. But I'm not sure I'm in the right place anymore. Mike reached across the table, his hand covering mine. His touch was warm, comforting, but it sent a jolt through me. You don't have to make any decisions right now, he said softly. Just be honest with yourself. Do you still feel what you used to feel for him? I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. It was hard to admit, but I knew the truth. The spark I once felt with John, it wasn't there anymore. And what scared me the most was that I had started to feel it with Mike. We sat there for a long time, not saying much after that. The silence was heavy, filled with unspoken truths. I wanted to pull away, to stop myself from going any further. But part of me didn't want to. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. Mike was giving me something I didn't even know I was missing. Eventually, I stood up, knowing I had to leave. I had to face my life with John. I couldn't keep doing this. But as I walked out of the cafe, I felt a strange emptiness. I knew I was walking away from something, but I wasn't sure if it was the right thing. I was torn between two worlds, between the safe, predictable future I had with John, and the excitement, the passion that Mike made me feel. I should have stopped then. I should have gone home and focused on my wedding, on my future with John. But I didn't. I couldn't. Later that night, I found myself texting Mike again. Can I see you tonight? I knew I shouldn't be doing this. Texting Mike again, wanting to see him again, was like playing with fire. But every time I tried to resist, every time I thought about stopping, something pulled me back in. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was excitement. Maybe it was just the overwhelming need to feel something real, something that made me feel alive again. Whatever it was, I couldn't stop myself. When he replied almost instantly, "Of course. I'll pick you up at 9, I felt a rush of anticipation. My hands were shaking as I put my phone down, and I realized just how far I had fallen. This wasn't just some harmless flirtation anymore. This was an affair. A real one. I spent the next few hours trying to focus on the wedding details, but my mind kept wandering. What was I doing? How could I face John after all of this? And yet, every time I tried to envision my life without Mike, I felt a strange emptiness. There was no turning back now. By the time 9 o'clock rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves. I wasn't sure what to expect, what this night would bring. I had no idea where this was headed, but a part of me didn't care anymore. Mike was there, as promised. When he pulled up outside, I stepped into his truck, trying to steady my breathing. He didn't say much as we drove, but I could feel the tension in the air, the unsaid words hanging between us. Neither of us needed to talk about what was happening. It was already clear. We ended up at the same park where we had met that first time. The place where it had all started. The same secluded spot by the lake, now eerily quiet under the glow of the moon. It was like we were both drawn there, like the location itself held a piece of our secret. We didn't need to say anything when we got out of the truck. Our bodies just moved toward each other, instinctively. I didn't resist when he kissed me. This time, it wasn't just a fleeting kiss. It was deeper, more urgent, more desperate. And I didn't fight it. I shouldn't be doing this. I whispered against his lips. Even though my hands were already running through his hair, I felt conflicted, torn between guilt and the overwhelming pull of desire. But in that moment, it didn't matter. It was just him and me. You're not the only one who feels this, he said softly, his voice low and almost a little rough. He kissed me again, and I melted into him, completely losing myself in the heat of the moment. This wasn't just about sex, though. It was about escape. Escape from the life I was about to commit to, escape from the responsibilities and expectations that weighed on me. I didn't know how I had gotten here, but I didn't care anymore. In Mike's arms, everything felt different. I wasn't just a fiancée, a bride-to-be. I was someone who mattered, someone who was seen. The night unfolded in a blur of stolen kisses, whispered apologies, and the kind of passion I hadn't felt in so long. I knew I was betraying John, but every time I closed my eyes, I couldn't stop thinking about the way Mike made me feel. For the first time in a long time, I was alive. Afterward, we lay on the grass, the night air cool against our skin. I didn't speak at first, afraid that saying anything would make this all real in a way I wasn't ready for. Mike didn't say much either, just held me close. But eventually, I broke the silence. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't hesitate. "You have to figure that out," he said, his hand gently stroking my arm. "But I'm not going anywhere." Those words, those simple words, cut through me like a knife. He wasn't going anywhere. But what about me? Was I really ready to throw away everything I had built with John? As much as I wanted to pretend like none of this mattered, I knew the truth. Mike might not be going anywhere, but I wasn't sure about me. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had lost. But there was no turning back now. The next day, everything felt heavier. The guilt, the confusion. It weighed on me like a ton of bricks. I had been lying to myself, lying to John. I had convinced myself that I could handle it, that I could keep everything separate, but the reality was starting to sink in. I couldn't keep going on like this. I had to make a choice. John had no idea what was happening, and that terrified me. Every time I looked at him, I saw the man I was supposed to marry, the man I had promised my life to. But I also saw someone who was oblivious to the storm brewing behind closed doors. We were sitting at the kitchen table that afternoon, sorting through final wedding details, when John looked up at me with that familiar smile. It was the kind of smile that used to make my heart skip a beat. "Hey," he said. "I'm really excited for the wedding. Are you?" I forced a smile, my heart sinking. "Yeah, of course. It's gonna be great," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But inside, everything was crumbling. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to tell him everything, to let him know that I was struggling. But I couldn't, not yet. Not when the wedding was so close. I stood up, my hands trembling as I walked to the window, looking out at the life I had built with him. And for the first time, I wondered if it was enough. Could I still go through with this wedding? Could I marry John, knowing what I had done, knowing what I felt for Mike? I didn't know. But what I did know was that I was in too deep, and the truth would have to come out eventually. The question was, would it be too late? The days before the wedding were a blur of chaos. I was supposed to be excited, supposed to be making final preparations, but instead, my heart was a mess. I spent my time flitting between John and Mike, pretending everything was normal, pretending I was still that bride to be filled with excitement. But inside, I was slowly unraveling. Every time I looked at John, I saw a man who loved me, who believed in us. But I also saw a man who was too caught up in the wedding, in the details, in the checklist, to see the person sitting right in front of him. I hated myself for what I was about to do to him, for what I had already done. The guilt was suffocating. But the truth was, I couldn't stop myself. I hadn't seen Mike since that night at the lake. I told myself it was a one-time thing, that I would just focus on John and our future. But the more I tried to ignore Mike, the more I found myself missing him. His attention, his touch, the way he made me feel. Like I was important, like I mattered. I hadn't realized how much I craved that until I felt it again, and now I couldn't just forget about it. I knew what I was doing wasn't right. I knew I was lying to John, deceiving him. But every time I thought about telling him, I felt paralyzed. What would happen if I told him the truth? Would he forgive me? Could we even survive something like this? It was the morning before the wedding when everything came to a head. I had just finished getting ready. My dress was hanging in the other room, and I was sitting in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection, trying to remember why I was doing this. I wanted so badly to believe in the life I had planned with John. But deep down, I knew I wasn't sure anymore. John walked into the room, looking sharp in his suit. He smiled at me, his eyes lighting up when he saw me in my wedding dress. "You look incredible," he said softly, walking over to me. I smiled back, but it felt forced. My heart was pounding in my chest. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. I was supposed to be thrilled, to be counting down the minutes until I married the man I loved. But all I could think about was Mike. "I can't wait to marry you," John said, his hand resting on my shoulder. "I've been waiting for this day for so long." For a moment, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to pretend that everything was fine. But the truth was, it wasn't. I wasn't sure I was ready to marry him. I wasn't sure I could go through with it when I knew what I had done, when I was still carrying the secret inside me. "John," I started, my voice shaky. "I need to tell you something." He looked at me, his brow furrowing in concern. "What's wrong?" "I've been thinking a lot, and I don't know how to say this, but..." I paused, taking a deep breath. "I made a mistake." The words hung in the air between us. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me, as if trying to process what I had just said. My heart was racing, and I felt like I was going to collapse right there. "A mistake? What do you mean?" His voice was calm, but I could see the concern growing in his eyes. "I've been seeing someone else?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The guilt crashed over me like a wave. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. And I'm so sorry, John. I never wanted to hurt you. He stood there for a moment, frozen. His face went pale, and I could see the shock and confusion in his eyes. What? You've been seeing someone else? I nodded, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I felt, I don't know, lost. And when I met him, he made me feel something I hadn't felt in so long. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to stop it. John took a step back, his face unreadable. Who is he? Is it someone I know? I shook my head, my voice trembling. No, he's a firefighter. Mike, we met a few weeks ago and it happened. I never meant for it to go this far, but it did. For a moment, John didn't say anything. He just stood there, processing everything I had just told him. Then, finally he spoke, his voice low and cold. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you talk to me? We were supposed to be getting married, Anna. We were supposed to build a life together. And now you're telling me this. I didn't know how. I whispered, my voice breaking. I didn't know how to face you. I didn't want to lose you. John's eyes hardened. But you already did. You already lost me, Anna. I don't know who you are anymore. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had never seen him like this, angry, hurt, devastated. He turned away from me, running a hand through his hair, pacing back and forth. I can't believe you did this. I trusted you. I thought you were the one person I could rely on, and you've been lying to me the whole time. I wanted to say something, to explain myself, but the words wouldn't come. I just stood there, tears streaming down my face, watching the man I was supposed to marry walk away from me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he turned back to face me. I can't marry you, Anna. I can't marry someone who doesn't respect me enough to tell me the truth. I can't marry someone who's been lying to me, who's been with someone else behind my back. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle on my chest. I understand. I whispered. I don't blame you. John walked toward the door, his steps heavy, and I knew, in that moment, that everything was over. The life I had planned with him, the future I thought we had, was gone. And it was all my fault. As he left, I collapsed onto the floor, consumed by the crushing weight of the mistake I had made. I had betrayed him, and now it was too late to undo it. And as I sat there, alone, I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. I didn't just lose John. I had lost myself too.